GoForThe2.com. We're into week number 10 of the college football season. We have some marquee matchups. It's rivalry week. I'm going to get into my predictions in a couple of seconds. I just want to remind everybody, this coming Friday, blogtalkradio.com, the NCAA Weekly Blitz Show. My co-host, former Georgia Bulldog wide receiver Corey Allen. We're going to break down the big matchup in Jacksonville this weekend between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Florida Gators. We'll tell you everything you need to know about both sides of the ball for each team. You got to stay with us this coming Friday, blogtalkradio.com, the NCAA Weekly Blitz Show. Check us out. Let's get right into the marquee matchup Saturday night between the 7th-ranked Miami Hurricanes and the 3rd-ranked Florida State Seminoles. This game has huge implications within the ACC. It also has huge implications within each team having a possible BCS national championship berth. Both teams will be up for this ball game. Both teams will be emotionally ready. They hate each other. It's going to be a marquee matchup. When you look at Miami, coming off a very lackluster performance against Wake Forest last week, they trailed at home much of that ball game 14-10, but their sophomore running back, Duke Johnson, led the way in the fourth quarter. He had 80 of his 168 rushing yards in the fourth quarter. He rushed for 2 key touchdowns that propelled the Hurricanes to the 24-21 victory over Wake Forest. Was Miami looking ahead to this Florida State game? I don't know, but Florida State was focused. They dominated NC State at home last week. Jameis Winston with another superb performance. That offense is hitting on all cylinders. This is going to be a very tough matchup for the Hurricanes in this ballgame. For Miami to have any chance at the victory, they're going to have to be able to rush the football against a very solid defensive front by Florida State. Duke Johnson's a must in this ballgame. He needs to step up in a big way to take the pressure off of quarterback Stephen Morris. Has not played very well, Stephen Morris, completing just over 50% of his passes, only 10 touchdowns on the season. He's going to need to stretch the field against the Florida State secondary. Whether he can do that or not, we're going to have to see. I like Florida State's offense. They haven't been challenged yet, but they're playing at home very balanced. They have a staple of backs that can rush the football, and those wide receivers should be able to challenge the Miami Hurricane secondary. When you look at this matchup, I think it'll be very close early on, but the way Oregon was able to pull away from UCLA last weekend, I think Florida State has way too much offense. They pick up a dominating victory in the end, 47-20 over Miami, and they move one step closer to a possible BCS national championship game should they win out the rest of the way. Let's talk about Michigan State. Very tough matchup, rivalry game. When you look at both teams playing okay in terms of offense, Michigan 2 weeks ago, very explosive offense against Indiana, but Devin Gardner has not performed well on the road. He hasn't played well in big games, made too many mental mistakes, throws the ball into double coverage. When you're talking about Michigan State, they're playing very solid on the defensive side of the ball. I like what they're able to do in terms of creating pressure, and I think they'll be able to challenge that Michigan offensive line. I'm not sold on the play of the Michigan offensive line. Way too many holes, in my opinion. I think they're able to challenge Devin Gardner, put pressure on him, and I like Michigan State in this ballgame to pick up the 33-20 victory over Michigan. Michigan State picks up another key Big Ten victory. Want to stay in the Big Ten right now, talk about Penn State, Illinois. Penn State got dominated on the road in the Horseshoe last week against the 4th-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. They came out of the bye week flat. Christian Hackenberg turned the ball over, did not make good decisions. He now comes back home. He's going to face a very gutty Illinois defense, a very gutty Illinois team. When you look at Illinois' offense, very good quarterback in Nathan Scheelhaus. He could beat you with his legs. He could beat you with his arm. I think he'll give enough fits for that Penn State defense, keep them guessing, and I like Illinois to get this win on the road, 24-20 over Penn State. I think you're asking too much for the Penn State defense to come back after that emotional loss last week on the road. They were embarrassed against Ohio State. I think the flaws on defense continue this week against a very good Illinois offense. They get the victory on the road in Beaver Stadium. Illinois shocks Penn State 24-20. Let's stay in the Big Ten. Let's talk about Nebraska and Northwestern. Nebraska dominated last week on the road in Minnesota. Taylor Martinez returned, but Minnesota shocked the Cornhuskers. I told you Minnesota would play Nebraska very tough. I thought they would lose a 3-point ball game, but they got the outright victory. When you look at this Nebraska team, they now head back to Lincoln. These fans are going to be very irate. They're going to be all over the coaching staff and head coach Bo Pelini. They did not forget his comments about a month and a half ago about the fans of Nebraska, about former national champion quarterback Tommy Frazier. There's a lot of pressure on Bo Pelini in the spot. When you look at Northwestern, they dropped 3 straight ball games, but Northwestern does play Nebraska very tough over the last couple of years. They were able to knock off Nebraska in Lincoln 2 years ago. They played Nebraska very well in Ryan Field last year. They were up late in the fourth quarter, but Nebraska got the victory. I think Northwestern has nothing to lose. All the pressure falls on Nebraska, and I like Northwestern to pick up the 31-24 road victory. Pat Fitzgerald and the Wildcats stun Bo Pelini. If Bo Pelini and Nebraska lose this ball game, this could be Bo Pelini's last game as Nebraska head coach. They will not think twice about firing him this late into the season. They are that disgusted with head coach Bo Pelini, so keep that out. Let's talk about the SEC matchup between Georgia and Florida. Todd Gurley, the standout running back for Georgia, does return this week. He was injured in game number 4 against LSU. He hurt his ankle. Since he went out, that Georgia rushing game slowly deteriorated. It might take him a little time to get going, but I like Georgia in this matchup. Aaron Murray playing very well with limited weapons. Todd Gurley will keep that defense of the Gators guessing. That will give balance to the Georgia offensive attack, and I think Mike Bobo will be able to exploit the holes of the Gators defense. When you look at the Gators offense, terrible 2 weeks ago in the loss on the road to Missouri. You're talking about a Gator offense that only accumulated 151 total yards of offense. When you look at their quarterback, Tyler Murphy, he's thrown 5 touchdowns and 2 INTs on the year, but 3 of those 5 touchdowns came in the win over 4 weeks ago against Arkansas. He threw 3 touchdowns in that ball game. In back-to-back losses to LSU and Missouri, Tyler Murphy has not thrown a touchdown pass. I don't like Florida's offense coming out of a bye week in this matchup. I know both teams haven't been playing very well, but I like the offense of Georgia to exploit the Gators defense, and Georgia picks up the victory 35-17 over Florida in this matchup. Let's stay in the SEC. Let's talk about the big game last week, Missouri, South Carolina. Missouri had it for the taking. They were up 17-0 late in that ball game. Connor Shaw came in, led the Gamecocks to 17 fourth quarter points. He led the comeback, the upset, 27-24, which devastated 5th-ranked Missouri. Now Tennessee comes to town. Tennessee got dominated last week by Alabama. They lost their starting quarterback, Justin Worley. He has torn ligaments in his thumb. He will not start this ball game. Joshua Dobbs, the 4-star recruit, will play in this ball game. He led the Volunteers to 10 second-half points against the number 1 ranked scoring defense in Alabama. He now makes his first road start going up against a very solid Missouri Tiger defense. But how emotionally drained are the Tigers after last week's defeat? I think Tennessee will be able to move the football with their offensive line. They'll be able to rush the football behind Rajon Neal and Marlon Lane. They'll be able to do enough to be in this ball game. I think Missouri wins, but I think Tennessee is in this game from start to finish. They lose a very close ball game, 24-21. Let's stay in the SEC. South Carolina, Mississippi State. South Carolina got the win last week. Very emotional victory. Expended a lot of energy on the road in Columbia. They now come back home against a gutty Mississippi State team. Mississippi State got a very hard-fought victory over SEC opponent Kentucky last Thursday night. They've had 9 days to prepare for this ball game. Connor Shaw, whether he plays or not, he expended a lot of energy. He's still not 100%. When you look at Mississippi State, a very gutty ball club, they'll be in this ball game. I think South Carolina wins, but I think it'll be very close, calling for a 27-20 South Carolina victory at home, just from the fact that they expended so much energy last week in coming from behind against Missouri. I think Mississippi State pushes the limit, but they lose a very tough ball game, 27-20 over South Carolina. Stay with me all season long. College football is the best, and I just love talking about it. See you next week.